Next on the agenda is a continuation of the special use permit / site plan preliminary / final review by Upstate Cellular Network doing business as Verizon Wireless for a proposed telecommunication facility and associated equipment on property at 511 Higby Road, New Hartford, owned by Charles T. Sitrin Healthcare Incorporated. Zoning is plain development institutional.
Herb, will you take us through what the law
Yes,
allows us?
we previously conducted a public hearing on this application, and at the time we talked about the fact that the reason that this is before you is it is within 750 feet of a residential area of the town. We talked about the fact that this is really a situation where the applicant initially has to establish a need, and once he is able to show that need and the inability to provide adequate service, there's not much that we can do in terms of stopping it. However, you can impose reasonable restrictions and reasonable requirements. One of the things also that they had to talk about was the inability to co-locate, and you recall they talked about all the circles and things such as that, and that they were unable to use an existing tower. If they meet those criterion, which that's your determination, then the issues that you're going to be looking at is buffering, landscaping, the height of the tower, and what you would approve. I know, it's my recollection, I think they were looking for 145 feet in height. The question is going to be, is that excessive or is that reasonable? The issue is reasonableness, and certainly you can impose reasonable requirements with regard to siting, aesthetics, compatibility with neighborhood. However, if those are deemed unreasonable by a court, obviously they would be set aside. One of the things that happens is if your determinations, and you say, well, you can only put a 10-foot tower and there's no reasonable basis for that, they would then bring a proceeding in Supreme Court in Oneida County, and then a judge would decide whether you were being unreasonable and arbitrary in your determination. So those are the type of things that you're going to be looking at, and you do have control over it.
But we only recommend to the town board, right?
No.
No. No.
Not on this one?
No.
Not on anyone.
This isn't a zone map amendment or text map amendment.
Okay,
No, this is your,
this is it.
you're it.
For federal law, though,
Yeah.
sets what we can't consider.
Well, you can't consider the waves and health and things such as that that have been deemed as not having been proven as a reasonable basis to deny. I mean, if they can show the need, they pretty much have, like a utility, they pretty much have the right to go forward.
And upon your review of this, have they shown the need?
I believe the need has been established. I recall as well specifically the presentation that they made. I thought that that did establish the need. There were residents here who spoke. I think Dr. Shaheen, the one in favor of this, based upon the limited cellular service in the area.
Joe, do you have anything you want to chime in with on this at this point?
Herb covered it precisely.
So property values, health, perceived health issues, we can't consider any of those types of things. And with the need shown, then it is questioned solely of a site plan review and then the height of this tower.
Landscaping.
And if I recall, 100 feet came into the discussion 2 months, I think it was 2 months ago.
Yeah. I had a note that there was some talk that the reason they wanted the 145 feet was as it related to 4G service and possibly selling to other providers based on the height. That if another company wanted to come in and co-locate, that they needed that additional height, but that was my recollection, that was a note that I made.
Do we have somebody here?
Sure.
Come join us.
Thank you. My name is Scott Olson. I was not here at the last meeting. I had someone had to cover for me, but go ahead, Frank.
Well, my recollection on the site issue was 140, one of these papers says
145.
141. I think it was,
Yeah,
145 is on here.
Sometimes the numbers get funny. The total, well, the top of the steel of the tower, we're talking about 145. We then we use the terminology antenna center line, which is basically the center of where our antennas will be attached to. That's 141 that I think you're referring to. We also have a lightning rod, a small stake that goes up about 4 feet from the top, so it's a total of 149. If I could address that quickly.
well, just before we
Sorry.
leave that,
Sure.
and I may have gotten this wrong, but I thought it was indicated that 100 feet could serve the purposes of Verizon, but then there would not be room if another provider showed need and wanted to come to that area, so that the antenna went up higher to accommodate additional carriers. Did I get that straight?
Well, I wasn't here. I certainly hope that my people didn't represent that, because I don't think that's correct. And I have Rick Andrews here. He's Verizon Wireless' RF engineer. He can chime in if I'm incorrect.
My note said that the 145 feet was based upon making it available for other companies to co-locate.
And that could be part of,
That's exactly what was said.
okay, like I said,
Yeah.
when we go to propose a tower, we don't care initially about other companies. I mean, there are competitors, but your law, and most laws, require us to build a tower of a height that would be sufficient to accommodate other carriers, so that so they don't have to have multiple towers. So let's say AT&T or someone like that wanted to come. And if we only had a tower of whatever the minimum height was, they'd either have to extend it, sometimes you can't extend them. So we build it, let me say this, we build it to what height we need at first, but we also make sure that it can accommodate other people. I think we provided some analysis for you in October that went into a height justification. And it's primarily based upon overcoming tree height, because this technology gets cluttered with, if you have trees, leaves, and a signal goes into that, the signal doesn't go through that material very easily. It gets, reflected, and Rick can certainly speak to that an awful lot better than I can. But that's what you're looking at, Mr. Chairman, is the visual. Yeah, exactly. So they gave a little schematic as to why we need 145 feet. There's some graphs in the back of that show you the loss of service that we would have if we went down to 125. And this is what we're looking at.
I'd like the engineer to address us regarding this 100-foot issue.
Yes, if you look at this particular exhibit, which I believe is exhibit 2, I'm not 100% sure.
I don't know where this one is. Oh, this one. Thanks.
It would be, I do not.
Oh, I still don't find that one.
It's in the site.
Which one are you doing?
Okay, it's going to be in your main application, that one. It's going to be tab number 4, and it will be the second colored map.
Is there something you didn't get?
We did 2 months ago.
This was the original application that was submitted.
That was probably with your paper.
Okay, yeah, okay.
If you'd like to look at it, I can certainly share mine.
Can I just ask a question, is he work for your firm?
I actually, I'm a consultant for Verizon Wireless and the RF Engineering Group,
RF Engineering, and where are you out of?
Albany, New York.
RF Engineering, okay. And what do you specialize in?
Specialize in figuring out where to place sites to complete the network build-out for Verizon Wireless's fourth
And I don't mean
generation.
to intrude on the chairman's questions, but how do you go about that process? Because I think that goes into these circles, how you get to the circle.
Well, a lot of it is based on every quarter, we have a team that drives the entire network, and and they establish where holes are within the network. Holes meaning coverage that is not up to standards for Verizon Wireless. We also look at customer complaints, known areas from people driving around, the cell technicians and whatnot. And we also always are updating our propagation models, which these are. So as new sites come on, we match them to the prediction, make sure that the prediction stays accurate. So that when we run these models, we know, just based on the prediction, what the coverage would truly look like in reality. So based on all of those criteria, we run predictions, we do the drive tests, we compare, and figure out where where the holes are in the network or areas that need to be fixed. So this would be one of the areas that was identified, and the proposed site is to fix the coverage gap along Higby Road.
Well, last month they took us through all these circles, but I still want to get down to how high this thing has to be.
Right. So
It was presented last month, and 2 months ago, and I'm pretty clear in my memory on this, that 100 feet would work for Verizon. They needed the extra height for other carriers. I would just like to know if that's true.
The statement was 100 feet would provide adequate coverage. That was the exact language that was used. But there was also talk about a 4G thing, so maybe you want to...
Yeah, so just by looking at this exhibit 2, which I believe you have it, right?
Yes.
So you can look at Higby Road, which starts from, if you look at the green blob from the upper left. So Higby Road running down this quick. So this plot being from 141 feet. So there's still a small gap in the northwest corner. And then approaching the town line, there's also a small gap there, which is based on terrain. So this is at 141 feet. So the lower you go, the bigger these holes become. So if we drop down to 100 feet, this gap may become much larger, well, it would become much larger. This gap would become larger, and it just heightens the need that at some point we need an additional facility here and another facility here.
Do you have anything that shows the 100 feet? Do you have one?
Well, there was this one plot that was submitted.
I just got it down verbatim.
I know it was me.
Like I said, I wasn't here, so I'm shocked that it was me.
I
but
was surprised myself.
because we would never, first of all, the whole, and he can explain it better than I, but if we as Verizon Wireless needed 100 feet, it would be highly unlikely that another carrier would need to be 33% higher than us.
Really?
Because we have such a good network. Yeah, that's usually, we're similar, we don't have the exact same sites as the competitors, but we're so close that usually, if we need 145 feet in one area, the competitor usually needs about 140. That discrepancy seems very strange.
We have some folks that are kind enough to film these meetings. That might be online. Is that
Would it be
online?
It's not online, but it can be.
It can be tonight, in a matter of an hour or so.
No, I mean the prior one, would you?
No, it's not, I did not put it up, but like I say, it can be put up.
We have the exact wording that was
I would just
stated.
love to, because like I said, I wasn't here, so I'm not saying it
Maybe-
wasn't said, I'm
Yeah,
just
maybe
shocked
you
that
could
it was.
ask them.
It could be put on YouTube
Well-
tonight.
That would be, if that's not too much of an inconvenience.
Not at all.
Ask the boss.
If we could get this analysis,
Sorry.
and please.
Yeah, so then this plot, which was Exhibit 6, which was part of the supplemental materials.
That's what
It's
you-
what-
This one.
I believe so. I believe that to your right, Mr. Chairman,
This
right there.
one.
Yes, sir.
So what that shows is the orange area. So this is a hatched overlay, showing the difference between coverage at 125 feet versus 141 feet. So anywhere that's shaded orange and red, there's a significant difference in signal loss across the coverage area. Yeah.
Okay. But it's hard to see, so I don't know if you want to just kind of point that out.
Yeah, so it's basically north of the site, so Higby Road is running here. So the majority of the coverage that's lost is to the north, which would make sense given the terrain. So what this is showing where 3 dB means half the signal, so say the site put out 10 watts. If you were in the orange area, the equivalent would be, you would be seeing 5 watts out of the site if it were lowered to 25 feet. So meaning that, you know, at the 145 feet, there's significantly better coverage in all of those areas that are shaded in orange and particularly in the red. So I guess the statement that 100 feet would be adequate is somewhat shocking to me because it would be significantly worse than what we're showing at 125.
Can I just ask, and this may be an ignorant question, but when you say service, so does that mean my call is that much clearer, or that my reception for my cell phone, for Wi-Fi purposes is that much clearer? What do you mean by service? I'm
It would be,
confused by that.
it would be two things. It would be far less likely to drop a voice call. And then as far as data rates go, they're not guaranteed, but Verizon advertises they would get 5 megabits per second downlink. And your chances of getting that in these orange and red areas would be significantly reduced.
Slower service,
Right.
if you wanted to download something.
Yeah, exactly.
What does this look like without a tower right now?
It's just no coverage over the majority of them.
No coverage, like no,
It's like this.
I was, if you go up Higby Road, you lose it. You lose the whole signal. And I did a lot of going up and around the corner and down Tilden, and you just lose the whole thing. And Sitrin has a real problem.
I remember people talking about it. I'm just curious how much worse or better the tower makes it.
You may not get anything, but there are
Yeah, so-
times when you didn't get anything at all.
Yeah, so this is exhibit 1 from the original materials, where the blue represents adequate service, or what Verizon considers adequate. And the white regions are areas that are, you know, very, very susceptible to lost calls, dropped calls, inability to access. the network.
That's the existing situation.
Right.
And all this stuff is totally just related to height of tower? I mean, like, where do you put up a 200-foot tower? Would everybody right around there have perfect 5, whatever they advertise, and no voice droppage, and
200 foot would likely fill in this entire white area.
and there'd be no problems with any of the things that we're talking about? Like,
For the most part, that's true, right? But because of the terrain, there would still be some patches of rough spots.
what kind of terrain issues? What does that mean?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain, but
Down in the hole surrounded by trees.
so this is a
I mean, it's a pretty
3D
steep hill, so, I mean, there's gonna be problems regardless of what you put up there, I guess is what we're saying,
Right, so this is a 3D sort of view, right?
Yeah.
So here's where the proposed site is.
Uh-huh.
Here's some of these deep valleys
Yep,
where, you know, you might hit patches of spots where you're completely blocked from service. I mean, I've never run an analysis at 200 feet, so it's hard to say, but, you know, I'm sure like up in this valley here, some of these deep terrain valleys, there would still be some issues.
still wouldn't fix it, but 145 feet would fix.
Yeah, the 145 feet is intended to fill in this bowl here.
So what about like over here and
Yeah, these lower terrain areas are already covered.
on the
Herb, does federal law dictate what adequate service is, or is it the carrier?
It's up to you to make the determination as to what you feel is fair and reasonable.
Up to who? The board?
And it may not have been a requirement of the application, but was there data supplied? I don't remember seeing anything on actual data of, you know, of the 5,000 users in that area. We have issues, not that the number matters, I'm just trying to understand if there was data supplied to us.
No, there wasn't.
Okay, I didn't think so.
We- Generally, I know Mr. Andrews referenced that, but generally when the engineer's designing a site, I mean, that is something that gets considered in the beginning part of the process. They don't then really use that data to kind of hone in on a specific location. They rely on those RF plots that you see in front of you. So we typically do not provide that. There are other reasons why we don't provide it, because it's not really the most don't take it the wrong way, it's not always the most accurate in terms of where exactly you're gonna have your holes, because there's so many factors to consider. The one thing, if I could just add also, and maybe if I'm repeating what's been said already, I apologize. I think the purpose of this, and Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, there is some service in the area, but like you said, the Higby Road, you get to a certain point, it just kind of completely bottoms out. This site will obviously increase that service. That's your 3G service that you have right now, pretty much, which is, we operate on a couple of frequencies. We're trying to add two new frequencies to this area that we just fairly recently acquired and are starting to roll out to this market, and that's your 4G and your advanced wireless service. You know, for what that's worth basically is we currently don't have service in the 700 megahertz system frequency in that area. We have it in surrounding areas, so we're just trying to bring it to that area. And all that means is that's your really high speed downloads that Rick was referring to. Without that tower there, you're not going to have that service there.
Well, that's the 4G LTE that's advertised.
Yeah.
But regardless of that additional, there are definitely gaps in service, there's no question about it. I'm just trying to gauge what is adequate service. A phone, where you can speak and not lose it within this whole area that we're talking about.
Well,
Data downloads become something else.
Yeah,
Well, at 100 feet, there would still be drop calls on both ends of Higby Road where the site connects to the rest of the network, to like we just looked at on that one plot to the northeast and to the east towards the town line.
Mm-hmm.
So at 125, it's kind of marginal. At 145, it would be solid throughout the entire area.
If you're on a
Just
call
from
on
a
the
call
road,
perspective.
call on the road. You lose a call on the road at 100 feet.
Right. Meaning,
The
if
road
you
per
had a
se,
voice...
not around Higby Road, but on Higby Road.
Right, well, I mean, it's difficult to say if I went 100 feet off the road in somebody's house. they're
Right,
not
right,
gonna
it
have
might,
service.
right. But on the road at 100 feet, you could still lose a call,
Right. Because of the terrain.
Well, Christine,
because I don't.
Christine has that,
But she's off the road.
and she's out there.
She's off the road, I don't have a problem.
Sitrin has lots of problems, and they have a lot of business.
But it's also, if you're on a voice call today, you're on the 3G network. So we're planning for the 4G network to discuss this, which unfortunately is lower power.
It's
So
our job to debate you, to get to the answers, right, to get to the data, the bottom.
No, it's great that boards want to know more about it.
So let me ask you this, we talked about, our town council told us what our duties are.
Sure,
How about the landscaping of this?
sure,
I see the pictures here of what it's proposed to look like.
correct.
Anything visually? Up top, I know up north, right, we have trees.
No, yeah.
Towers that look like trees, I
we
don't
might as
know
well-
how much we get from that.
Since you raised
That's a
it,
question.
you can,
They look awful.
we've done,
They do.
we've done
I
tree
gotta have a
towers.
tower on a Franken.
We've done tree towers. For what it's worth, I've been doing this for about 17 years now, and there are places that are very appropriate for tree towers. And looking at some of the sims that we provided you, I'm not convinced this would be a great tree tower location because it does stick at 145 feet. It's significantly above most of your native trees. Once you do that, you're adding, a tree tower is going to add a much bulkier facility that you're going to put the branches on. So it's going to be a large facility sticking up, and it might look out of place. Obviously, that's something that you would have to decide. We typically would recommend tree towers, or be happy to do them in areas where, say the tree tower is 70, 80 feet, and you have 60, 70-foot trees in that area. It blends very nicely. This, it's a little different.
Well, while we ponder this height business, perhaps you can take us right through the actual site. How it's gonna come off of Higby Road and what kind of screening, landscaping,
Sure.
talking about what Heather was bringing up.
Sure. If you are coming off, we just drove the site again tonight before we came here, but off the Higby Road, obviously you're familiar with it more so than I am, but the area that we're going to be coming off of is fairly wooded right now. It's pretty heavily wooded. And we would basically carve out, give or take 30-foot wide area so that we can put our utilities in, as well as our 12-foot gravel driveway. The rest would remain, that natural vegetation is not going anywhere, that's touching it. So you'd have just that little hole, but because we curve the road a little bit, I don't think you're gonna see much of the compound. So from Higby Road, I think you're gonna be fairly well screened. That's the base of the facility. Because of the angle and how close the trees are to the road, you're probably not gonna see that much of the tower from that location also. Your other road, I don't know the name of the cross street, I should, you were just there. The Sitrin, going to Sitrin? I'm thinking of the one right next, go past it, that's
Tilden.
Are you talking about Mohawk by the cemetery?
No, I think I'm talking about Tilden.
Okay,
If you
it's
made a
up
left-
further.
Correct.
If you take an immediate left, it's the Sitrin driveway.
I'm thinking if you drive
Right
past there,
across from Mohawk.
I know what you're talking about, but if you drive past there and past our site, you come to Tilden.
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 Into the left.
Correct. You know, there's gonna be a view, there would be a view of the compound from that road there, the way it exists right now, 'cause it's pretty much an open field. And the tower site is just beyond the tree line, give or take, so there might be some visibility from both the towers in that location, as we've shown you in our photo sims.
Is that at 145?
That is at 145.
And if it's at 100?
If it's at 100, we're probably not gonna build it. Because I'm really jumping this gun, but I don't think they'd build it, because it would be a useless tower to them. And I'm not trying to contradict what was said before, I want to find out who the heck said that, because
That's photo 6, by the way. You.
Yeah, that's up Tilden.
that was the view I was talking
That's
about.
Dr. Heem's, I think, property.
And at the base of that facility, looking down, you have, obviously, the tower's gonna be seen. What screening is being proposed to go around the building itself?
Right now, there'd be a security fence that we generally propose. I should double check. I don't know that they're proposing any screening in that area. However, being reasonable, because there's a possibility of seeing the base of the facility there, I think it probably would be appropriate to put some screening there. I'm not sure if at the time of these plans were done, they knew exactly what trees would be cut down and if the base of the compound would be seen from Tilden. But if those, when you look at those photos that we submitted, I think you're going to see part of the base. And I think if the board thought it was important to try to screen the compound from that area, we can certainly put some landscaping there to help with that. Obviously, it's not going to screen the whole tower, but we can at least maybe screen the better part of the facility, the base facility.
Which is, how big is the building?
12-foot by 30-foot, 10 feet high.
No, that definitely can be screened.
Yeah,
As can the fence.
yeah.
We've got to
Not
have
that I
some
don't
kind
know
of
if it matters
security
with the
fence
tower sitting
anyhow,
there.
don't you?
There is a security fence, yes.
Okay, and this would be a dead end where, anyone could drive in and check it?
Well, that would be trespassing.
Well, not just anyone, but authorized.
But if you mean if the
personnel.
town wanted to check? Yes, yes. Yep.
Security on it?
It's gonna be, it's a facility that will be secure, locked. We also have it remotely tied into their operations center, so that if there's any breach of the facility there, if something goes wrong, they're notified immediately about it, and they can dispatch appropriate people to take care of it.
Okay, and then the fall down area.
The fall down area right now is,
Is it, I thought it was remote enough.
it's remote enough right now, yes, that it wouldn't, there are no structures except for, I think, an old foundation.
Yeah,
That's just,
230,
yeah, the old
236
Wadsworth
feet
place.
from the roads.
And I think they showed us that 2 months ago.
Everything else.
right.
Julius?
Got a few of them before I go back to the tower. The plans show a construction entrance for going obviously to the road, and then the finished drive is gonna be a crushed stone drive. Is there something or means to provide for maintenance of that construction entrance, so when it's done, it's not just left as a construction entrance for the town to have to worry about dirt and soil migrating onto the roads?
Maybe like a little bit of asphalt?
I mean, cleaning it and replacing it, if not asphalt. I'm not saying asphalt specifically.
Okay.
Cleaning the area.
Yeah, I think that's something that clearly we can work into a condition, absolutely, that they would, and Verizon would not have any objection to that. They don't want to create a hazard to your roads.
No, I'm asking for the crushed stone.
Where's the-
It provides a detail in the back on the,
Crushed stone
on
and
construction
then-
drive, it's construction drive. They should remove and replace the existing, what they're proposing is construction entrance, which is, because they want their 4-inch stone, that's basically mean a number 4, or item 4. And that should be replaced to match the existing gravel drive. So it should be a clean gravel drive when you're done, not a construction entrance with an included gravel drive over it.
Kirby?
Can-
They wouldn't curb it, it's gravel. They wouldn't want to curb it.
Well, I understand that in other places they mandated curbing. Well, I talked to, Byron Elias, who also does this permit. And he said,
You know, one thing, I've never, doesn't mean it hasn't happened. I've never seen curbing on any of the sites that I've worked on.
okay.
But, again, doesn't mean it hasn't happened in other places. Where I, you know,
I just want to be clear on what Julius is talking about. We're talking about the same driveway.
We're talking about the same driveway, there's a construction entrance detail shown in the last drawing. When they're done with construction, they should remove that construction section and replace it with a full section of road, or gravel roadway that's proposed. They have stable, on page 505, they show stabilized construction entrance detail. Stone and soil associated with that should be removed. And replace with clean stone, consistent with what's shown on, I'll say, site plan sheet 105, showing the detail.
hundred maybe?
Well, if we get that far, Julius, we'll make sure that's in there.
Yeah, and
What's wrong with the construction? Usually it's less soil, there's a lot of soil and dirt associated with that from the construction vehicles going in and out. And if they leave that, every time it rains, somebody crosses it, moves, you're gonna get a lot of soil migration out to the regular road. But that should be pulled up and it should be replaced.
Well, I think
with
that the
soil.
grade is off the regular
Right.
roadway anyway.
The grade is after the culvert.
Anything else?
Yes, what's the total acreage for disturbance?
I believe we have that in the EAF, and it would be .209 acres.
Anything else, Julius?
Not relative to the site plan and site grading. We're ready to get back to the structure.
We're ready.
What is the actual structure manufacturer? What is the proposed, who's the proposed manufacturer of the structure? Is it a known structure or something?
I can get that information for you, although I don't know that they have it, because usually they bid it out. Once there's an approval, they don't do it prior to that point, because they actually have to.
But it's basically it'll either be a modular type structure, or will it be a specifically fabricated structure in precise requirements?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. Although I can find out.
Shelter or the tower itself?
Tower.
Power.
Anything else, Julius?
Yes, the site plan, visual plans provide for information and tower review at 125, 145, and 165. We've only seen a variation in the RF report, or at least I have, for 125 and 145. Do we have anything at 165?
I'm sorry, are you referring to the balloons?
I'm referring, the maps and the drawings shown with the report by Costage Engineering to provide a visual visualization for 125, 145, and 165.
Correct.
The actual RF study provides a difference between 125 and 141. Was anything done at 165 before?
No.
Okay.
No, and the photo simulation report that you're referring to, we usually do 3 different balloons, and in that case, we did the 165, 145, and 125. 2 of those balloons are marker balloons. We only look at the 145, that's, in other words, if we're out in the field, there are some locations where you're not going to see the facility, but we want to see the top balloon just to make sure that we confirm that we can't see it, so that's why we wouldn't have done the 165.
Okay.
That 165 was just for photos.
And you didn't even run the RF, right, so you didn't run the RF at 165?
No, because we're not proposing 165, you know.
Yeah, it helps too to see if the wind is blowing significantly, if you have the string of 3 balloons versus if you just have one. It's hard to tell whether it's.
Well, with that watching it move, there were no velocities posted in the type of structure that you guys are referencing. I didn't see any place where there was, unless it was in the previous report, any reference to loading or what standard you're using for that. For the structure itself.
We're gonna, when we build a new structure, it's gonna be based upon the industry standard now is what they call the Rev G standard. And it's, I forget what it's, the TIA, it's a whole bunch of numbers and acronyms. But it's the current standard that's been basically approved by the industry, which factors into, we can go on and provide the information about the loading, the ice loading, the wind, the anticipated for this area, that sort of thing. It'll be done pursuant to that. That comes with the design part of it.
Those were my feelings.
Okay.
I just want to bring up a point in what you additionally sent us.
Okay.
It does talk about co-location opportunities at 125 125 feet, as the chairman brought up previously at 100.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned earlier that wasn't something that you were potentially looking at, but yet you got it in writing in what you sent us.
Don't know what, we will allow, we certainly will allow people to co-locate on a tower.
It also shows slopes going down.
I'm not sure I'm following the question
Right there, if
exactly.
you want to just take what,
Sure.
well, I think the chairman asked you about anything less than the 145 feet. You said it just would work, in your phrase, that would be advantageous for us to put up. And that we really don't look at relocation, but in that letter that was sent to us, the idea of relocation comes up at 125 feet.
True. True. What this says is that if the tower height would decrease to 125 feet AGL, coverage, capacity, and future co-location opportunities would decrease, and that is absolutely true. Let me just be blunt, we don't care about co-location in terms of having our competitors on our towers. We certainly have agreements with all of them, they're more than welcome, but I'd be lying to you if I told you, like, this is great, we want them to come on. We care less. But we know it's important to the town, because we know that if we build a tower of a certain height that can accommodate co-location and other carriers, it's better for you. Because it might then alleviate the need for one extra tower in your town. Does that make sense?
You're willing to allow them to go to 125 feet when you go to 145?
Well, their requirements may be different
Yeah.
for that area. They may be looking at a different,
Right.
smaller area to cover, coverage too.
And that's typically how it works. Even if we go on to another tower, another company's tower, they will, if they build it at 150 feet, they say, hey, it's available at 135 feet. We may not like it as much as we would at 150, but it's their tower. They built it, they have the right to take the top spot. And we would go on at 135.
So the higher you are, the better.
Sometimes. In general, yes. Depending on where you are, but more or less, yes.
Public safety, have you inquired of them at all about coverage up through there? I mean, our police department travels that area up there quite a bit.
We haven't heard anything. We haven't, I don't think we've reached out to them. I don't know if we've been asked to.
Wasn't there someone here at the meeting last time?
Yes, we heard from the highway
Yeah,
superintendent
superintendent,
2 months ago, who indicated the coverage was dropped in
Right.
various areas.
That's accurate.
I should know,
Gotta talk to each other.
I really don't.
Would it be fair to say that this propagation at 141 that we discussed earlier that shows what is lost by going to 125 is one of the most important things that have been in front of us regarding need?
No. That, well, that goes more to height justification. If you want to look at need, I think you're looking at one of two plots exactly. That shows you what the coverage will be like in the green color.
So this is need and this is height justification.
Yes, sir.
Bill, you got anything? Are you done, Julius? I'm sorry.
I just was gonna ask the typical secret type questions, you know, since this is a structure and you're coming before us at the existing height, you have no intentions of ever raising the height of the structure whatsoever.
We have no intentions as of now, 10 years down the road, if technology change, I can't say. There is no intention, there's no plan here to say, oh, go into the town and get 145, and then we'll come back. It doesn't, that's not what we're doing. But, I don't know what the technology is gonna be like 10 years from now. So something could change down the road where we needed it, but my anecdotal evidence, again, doing this since the mid-90s, I have yet to go into a town and request a tower height extension on any of the towers that I've gotten approved, or even really for any towers at all.
So what's our scope of approval or not approval tonight, Mr. Chairman?
Well,
Or do we approve it as they present it, or do we make the height
the
modification?
height modification is something the board has authority, according to her, to do. However, I caution that we have to be within certain parameters, because I'm certain that we would face an Article 78. We have a duty of the town not to put them in that situation, but that's within our authority.
Right, as I read, impact minimization is the most important role shared by the local review board and the applicant during the review process. Both parties need to work together to consider alternatives such as height of the facility. It may take several meetings of give and take between the parties to achieve a mutually acceptable solution. The applicant should describe efforts to minimize visual impact. If this objective cannot be accomplished in some instance, the applicant should explain why it is not technically feasible, providing substantial evidence to support his claim. The local review board shall consider these efforts and may require additional efforts if there is a reasonable basis for such requirement. Following are some of the more practical items to consider, and it says height, minimize the height of the facility, which is what I talked to you about when you said to me, is there 100 or 200 or whatever. Technically, it says minimize, but obviously reasonableness has to come into play.
Well, and I guess, just thinking out loud, how reasonable is it for us to say, okay, maybe this 100-foot doesn't work, we bring it down to the 125, and I'm looking at the gaps in coverage. And then somebody else comes along and says, we're gonna stick another tower somewhere nearby to take care of this tower, which is now that we're stuck with, it's up.
Is that drawing 125 or 100?
No, the 125 shows
It's like,
the purple things,
it
those are
shows
the
you,
gaps.
it shows you the difference between 145 and 125, they call it a delta plot, so that the hashed marks are the area that would lose coverage if we went down to 125.
And I would assume that those opposed to the tower would like it to be 0 feet in height. So
I would too, I mean, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, we don't have that option. But one thing we don't have, which I would like to see, is the screening around the base facility. And its impact on Tilton. It's bad enough people to be looking at a tower of any height, but we're not seeing any kind of a screening plan, and whether that screening can be outside the fence, which is what I would prefer, And how much is necessary. It might have to be only on two sides, one side, I really don't know. And I think Sitrin's drive is quite a ways from there, Joe.
Yeah,
So the impact might only be on the building as far as the base, but we ought to be at least addressing what we can without people having to look at that base facility and the fencing. So that's something I want to see. I don't know what more we can do about this height business and be reasonable under the law.
No, I think go for 145.
I don't think from an aesthetic standpoint it's gonna make
No.
a big difference if you're at
You're
125
gonna see
or
that
145
there anyhow.
of the height of the tower,
But I think
but the
the
aesthetics
bottom of it should
of
be
the base are,
landscaped. I
shouldn't be
mean,
questioned.
make it as unobtrusive at that level as possible.
No, I understand. What we'll do is we'll go back and we'll have our engineers, surveyors, landscape people mark the plans up to show some proposed landscaping. And I can probably have that one picture that you see in there, like where you see the base. We can probably have that simulated to show you what it would look like. I can do that.
Well, going back to my favorite chart, it's becoming this propagation one. If you're gonna do this other stuff, would we be able, I mean, obviously at 100 feet, it's gonna be worse than this, we're looking at 125. Just for the sake of dealing with that 100-foot issue one way or another, is this something that is difficult to prepare to show us?
No, it's not difficult to compare, but, you know, as Scott said before, I don't really see a scenario where 100 feet would be acceptable.
But you make me so much happier to be able to see that.
Well, I mean, that's fine.
Well, it's actually a very good point,
This.
because if
145 versus
the real
125
visual
versus
impact at
100.
100 versus 125 is
see it.
really minimal, then it's not an issue, take
145
the
versus
issue out, that's why
125
it's
versus
important,
100.
right?
Yeah.
See, I think if you're gonna put it in, you put it up there high enough so everybody else will see it.
I'm not debating that at this point,
I
really.
know that.
I just, you know, our residents are concerned about these things, we're concerned about these things. Unfortunately, it's a technology we all use. I'm sure if I asked everybody to pull out their cell phone, everybody in this room would pull one out. But we did hear some things the last go around, and I would just like to see it. I know what it's gonna look, I probably don't, I know it's gonna look worse than this 125, but I think you should come back with this screening plan. And since you are, anyways, and since our engineer, your engineer said, it would not be that difficult to show us that, I would like to see it.
Fair enough.
Is there anything else that we want to see?
Rick is in the back.
Yes, Rick?
Chairman, I back Jules's about the driveway.
We'll make that a condition if,
Yeah, if that goes through, I have similar issues up on Woods Highway, with their driveways up there with a cell tower, National Grid. Gravel driveways brings the stones, the gravel out all the time. I would like to see 50 or 75-foot paved driveway that meets Higby Road and goes in, and then go to your gravel. That's, you know, talking with, that's not my road, it's a county road, but they would agree with me.
And I think from my perspective, you know, we talked a lot about coverage versus height, and we got pictures and all of that, but some of those pictures may be in areas where it's green space now, and maybe will forever stay green space or may be populated. But any data that you could provide to defend your case as to why you need 145 feet versus 100 or 125, and what real coverage, I mean, and this is just my personal, I drive that road 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm on the phone. I have a BlackBerry, so it's probably the lowest form of coverage you can get. I don't have a problem, but there are a lot of other people who may, so.
Do you have Verizon Wireless?
Yeah. But I understand I don't have the highest, I don't have the best coverage, or I mean, I don't have the best plan, so I get that. I guess I'm just trying to look for, defend why you have to have the 145. You show a picture, it's a nice picture, but where do you really get? No,
I think this is gonna be hard to do.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but that's typically how we demonstrate that. But if we're gonna do the 100-foot plot also, we'll have a couple more color illustrations that show you the differences. I'm anticipating that the 100-foot plot is gonna be really bad, just because of the terrain up there and looking at what 125 does. I'm not sure what, well,
Okay.
I'll talk to Rick and see what we can do.
Okay.
The other thing I just want to add, and clearly this board, you have to, it's a compromise. What is the appropriate height? And I just want to throw in there again, that again, if you go to a lower height, you know, we may be able to live with it. It's going to compromise our network in some spots, and if people complain about drop calls here or there, I mean, we're doing the best we can, but you might also lose that opportunity for co-location. And again, I don't care about our competitors, but you might, because you might have them come in and say, we need a new tower, or we need to raise this tower up another 20 feet. I just something for you to consider.
What about at 145, that same thing?
This one here,
Do we have that?
that's the orange on this?
That's showing what, the orange and the red are the difference if you drop down to 125.
Oh, so you get this whole coverage if you stay at the 145.
The one in the book.
This
Yes.
green cover, this
Yeah.
one here?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
So these two for us are really important. It's something, since we talked about this height, that I've worried about from the get-go, and that is the possibility of another tower going in the same area. By the way, Sitrin owns all the land around this, so if there's development in the future, that's Sitrin doing the development.
And as the board knows, I mean, our application includes a letter from them. We did
Yes.
talk to them about
No, Rick was
possibly
here.
going to other locations, and unfortunately, I think they may have plans down the road. You know more than
There's nothing worse than
I. My partner told me that.
Anything else before we adjourn this for the additional information?
Did we address some of the people's concerns of difference back further?
Citron says this is where it's going.
We talked to Sitrin about 3 different locations on the property, and there's a letter in the record, I forget which exhibit it is.
Yeah,
but
well, I want to hear everything.
Hear from me? I can't force their hand.
No, but you considered the other locations and that was the only one that was
Yes.
acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the engineer went through that 2 months ago as well, the other person.
Right.
He's about to be fired.
Yeah, who was going for a fight?
For that 100-foot thing?
Yeah.
Then we are going to adjourn this, ask you for this additional information, and then we will come to terms with it as soon as we get that information in, we can put it back on the agenda.
I anticipate we should have that information to you within the next couple of weeks.
Great.
Thank you.
And with that,
We're done.
we are adjourned. Thank you.